Okay, we are live from Perry's Prognostications from Berkeley Springs, Volume 1, Episode 1.
Do I start now?
You start now.
Good morning. I thought today I would give a little teaching on something because of a phone call I got from my brother the other day, who has come back into the church and made a comment about St. Joseph. That why don't we teach, you don't hear about St. Joseph? And I said, he's been there all along. He's the hidden saint. And I said, we have feast days. And he went, what? So I wanted to research to make sure I had these accurate. But March 19th is called the Feast of St. Joseph, patron saint of the Universal Church. On May the 1st is a feast day called St. Joseph the Worker. Now, before I do this about St. Joseph the Worker, it's interesting because May the 1st was the Russian May Day celebration. So I went to my little book to make sure I had it accurate, and it says, in an address to the Catholic Association of Italian Workers, May the 1st, 1955, Pope Pius XII proclaimed May the 1st the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. Thus he imparted special religious significance to an observance that had been strictly secular, the popular feast of labor throughout the world, and one that had been used by the enemies of the church to further their evil designs. Now, the reason I'm saying that, May the 1st was the Communist May Day celebration of the Communist Worker. Interesting, the church in 1955 declared the feast day St. Joseph the Worker. Now, the reason I wanted to tie this in is because people would come up to me and say, you know, they're going to take In God We Trust off that dollar bill. I would look at them and say, oh, it wasn't even on there. Did you know that was not put on that dollar bill? It wasn't made a law until 1955, the same year that the church instituted the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. In contrast to the Communist Worker, the Communist May Day celebration, we celebrate the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. Now, interesting, that was made a law in 1955 to put In God We Trust on that dollar bill. 1955 was the feast of St. Joseph the Worker. The same year they declared it.
Right.
The same year they declared that is the same year that in our country, the United States of America, which is Mary's country, interesting, that same year they drew up the law to put In God We Trust on that dollar bill. If you check a dollar bill before 1955, you will see In God We Trust is not on there. But from that time on, it was. Now, the reason I'm saying that is, do we know about St. Joseph? My brother made a comment, and I thought, wait a minute.
1 minute. 1 minute.
Wait a minute. I grew up in St. Mary's Church. On either side of the altar was one was a statue of St. Joseph. On the other side was a statue of Mary. St. Vincent de Paul, our church in Berkeley Springs. On one side was St. Joseph. The other side was Our Lady. We haven't forgotten he's the hidden saint. But it's interesting because at Fatima, during the miracle of the SUN, while the SUN was spinning and falling and people were seeing this, Lucia was seeing Our Lady dressed in the brown robes of Our Lady at Mount Carmel. Beside her was St. Joseph holding the baby Jesus. And Jesus and Joseph were blessing the world. That was the great miracle of the sun at Fatima. It's called the day the sun danced. If you ever go to the book of Esther, you'll find that when that race was to be destroyed.
We need to wind it up.
The day the race was to be destroyed, it said the sun came forth and began to spin, and it devoured all the people. God was saving his people read the book of Esther, which was a prefigure of Mary.
Okay, this is episode 1 of Perry's Prognostications. This is January the 30th, 2020.